I wasn't sure there was going to be a sparring match agreement that we'll spar for a while. I wasn't sure. I was honest about it. That's why he said it's going to go rounds. I wasn't sure if there was an understanding that, we'll play a little bit and then we'll get a little more and, whatever. So that was part of it.
He's had double jaw surgery, 4 plates, 8 screws in his face, and everybody is just kind of breezing past that like it's no big deal. But I'm looking further into this because that's no easy surgery, and I'm starting to ask the question, is this the beginning of the end of Jake Paul's boxing?
As his brother, I was just shocked. I'm in the hospital with the guy, and he's like, yo, can you make this TikTok? Can you film this for me? He's like laughing and having a good time.
Does not have any agenda against Anthony Joshua, because it feels to me like that fight, I before the fight, I was refusing to accept the principle that this fight could be scripted.
The boxing world erupted with intense reactions, with some voices claiming Anthony Joshua should face consequences for the damage Jake Paul sustained in the ring. Critics pointed to the seriousness of Paul's injuries, which required medical treatment, and placed blame on what they viewed as a dangerous mismatch. Experts argued that Joshua's strength and pressure highlighted concerns about safety rather than wrongdoing, emphasizing that the real issue was matchmaking. The bout left fans and professionals stunned by how one-sided it became, fueling wider debates about fighter protection and responsibility in high-profile events.
Away from the power, you could call it running, and you'll be right. You can also say it's smart for a guy Jake's size and understanding that AJ is a fucking monster. It's also smart to fight that way. It's not the most aesthetically pleasing. It was not.
Analysts Brian Campbell and Shaka Majloon offered a detailed analysis of Jake Paul's recent bout with Anthony Joshua, concentrating on both the tactical approach and the physical impact the fight had on Paul. They explained that Joshua's power caused clear damage, with heavy shots that later required Paul to have surgery on his jaw. To manage the threat, Paul depended largely on movement and evasive tactics, circling the ring constantly to avoid being pinned against the ropes. While this approach lacked offensive intent, it helped him last longer than many expected against such a dangerous opponent. Campbell and Majloon noted that Paul's emphasis on footwork and ring awareness helped conserve energy and limit some of the punishment. Still, Joshua's size and strength led to visible effects as the fight wore on. They concluded that Paul's game plan highlighted the value of defensive strategy in boxing, while also reinforcing the dangers of high-stakes matchups between unevenly matched fighters.
In terms of what he's doing in the boxing ring.
Listen, so long as people will tune in and so long as Jake Paul is paid by Netflix or any broadcaster to air his fights, we're going to see this continue. And Jake Paul knows his business model, right? Now, this deviated, this AJ fight, which came together kind of last minute after the Tank Davis fight fell apart. But we know Jake Paul's MO here. It's find the most popular guy with the most physical disadvantages for me to fight. And Jake Paul has the benefit that he's turned himself into a villain, or in the pro wrestling circles, a heel. People tune in to watch. We did not tune into this fight to see competitive boxing. Most of us tuned in because we thought, here's Anthony Joshua. Here is a 2-time unified heavyweight champion, a guy who physically just overwhelms Jake Paul. And we're finally going to get what Tyron Woodley and Anderson Silva, Nate Diaz were not physically fit, whether it be through their size, experience, or age, to do, and that is knock out Jake Paul. And so, because I don't really feel like we got that satisfying comeuppance that a lot of people have been waiting for, it kind of gives Jake Paul a little bit of mystique, I'd almost say, to still try and string this along. Now, I don't know in terms, he says he wants to be cruiserweight champion. I'm not quite sure what the competitive road there is, because let's make no mistake, the reason this fight lasted as long as it did is because Jake Paul focused exclusively on being elusive. He did his best, and kudos to him, right? He did a great job of not getting cornered. He was always on the gas until the gas sort of fell out from underneath him. And so I don't quite know, short of leveraging his popularity, how he's going to get to that title shot if he's not actually going to fight, like really fight an elite boxer. But if he's looking to make money, there's the KSI fight out there, there's the Tommy Fury.
Former UFC champion Michael Bisping reacted strongly to Jake Paul's decisive loss against Anthony Joshua, calling it a clear demonstration of elite-level boxing. He stressed how outmatched Paul was, highlighting the sharp technique and heavy power behind Joshua's punches. AJ's combinations and uppercuts limited Paul's movement and exposed flaws in both his defense and overall game plan. Bisping explained that the serious injuries Paul suffered were the result of stepping in with a much bigger, stronger, and more experienced opponent, something Paul had never faced at this level before. He added that confidence and promotional hype were no substitute for the technical skill and physical demands of competing against a top heavyweight. While Paul managed to last the rounds, Joshua's control and dominance made the difference in class obvious. Bisping concluded that the fight served as a hard lesson about respect, preparation, and true skill in professional boxing.
Because I'm a big Anthony Joshua fan. Of course, I've been a supporter for the longest time. A rather lackluster, unmotivated Anthony Joshua that didn't look like he was being particularly nasty, right? A lot of the time he was out of range, and okay, it is hard to land a shot on someone that's backing up and moving away the whole time. And there was a lot of times where he had him in the corner and he could have thrown a shot, and sometimes he was telegraphing his shots, and anytime he did go in to throw a punch, as I said before, Jake Paul would shoot in and turn it into a wrestling match. And even when he wasn't shooting in, he was clinching a lot. This is boxing, it's not MMA as we know. The referee should have done a much better job of getting in there and separating them much, much faster. As I say, it was the 6th round. I think it was the 4th round he got dropped twice. In the 5th round he got through it. In the 6th round, caught him with the jab, a glancing right hook. He goes down, and that was that. That was all she wrote, right? I did a live. There was about 9,000 people watching at one point. Nobody was particularly enjoying the matchup. Listen, okay? I respect both men. I respect anyone really that steps into the ring, okay? And certainly going up against Anthony Joshua, that was a tall task, okay? You know, metaphorically and figuratively, right? It was a tall task. It was a big job. It was a tough opponent. It was a mismatch, and it was, right? Jake Paul never worried Anthony Joshua once. He never rung his bell. He never caused any damage. He never had him worried. He never did anything. It wasn't a fight. It was a display of how long can Jake Paul last? Can he run away?
Following the blockbuster showdown between Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua, reports claimed both fighters earned around $92 million each, making it one of the highest-paying bouts in boxing history and a global Netflix event. However, Joshua's payout reportedly took a major hit due to taxation. As a UK resident competing in the United States, he is subject to US federal taxes as well as UK international tax obligations, which could reduce his earnings by an estimated $66 million. This significantly lowers his actual take-home pay compared to the headline figure. By contrast, Jake Paul, as a US-based fighter, does not face the same UK tax burden, allowing him to retain a much larger share of his purse despite losing the fight. The situation highlights how taxation can dramatically impact international boxing earnings and serves as a reminder that reported purses often differ greatly from what fighters ultimately receive.
Has to pay, as you see here, a whopping $43 million. $43 million of his $92 million purse. That means Anthony Joshua was left with $49 million. Right? Now, he also has to pay, I believe, 10% of that to his promoter, Matchroom CEO and promoter.
Dominic Engel offered a brutally honest assessment of Jake Paul's fight with Anthony Joshua, focusing on how Paul approached the bout. He explained that Paul's main strategy was to avoid prolonged exchanges rather than stand and trade punches, which made it harder for Joshua to trap him in close quarters. Although Paul absorbed a solid right hand, he showed toughness by continuing without panic. Engel pointed out, however, that Joshua was not operating at full intensity, as there was no need for him to fully extend himself in an 8-round contest. Given Paul's experience and level, a sustained all-out attack from Joshua was unnecessary to stay in control. Engel compared this dynamic to Tyson Fury's outing against Ngannou, noting that even elite fighters do not always look at their sharpest depending on the opponent. He emphasized that boxers often perform to the level set by who is in front of them rather than at their absolute peak. When Joshua did land clean shots, Paul clearly felt them, but overall Paul managed to get through the fight without being in constant danger, highlighting both his defensive awareness and Joshua's measured control of the bout.
And AJ is not the best at closing people off, and it's hard chasing somebody down who don't want to engage, and then he tagged him every now and again. So
does it look bad on him because there was one right hook that he took was a serious shot. Obviously, he didn't flinch from it, but the fact
not really, because you'll take into consideration that you can get. There'll be no way. Well, Anthony Joshua thought, if he hits me, there's a possibility he's going to hurt me. And I felt a couple of shots early on in the fight. There's no way Jake Paul at the level he's at, and who he's boxed and what he's done, that he's, and it's like AJ, like you say, he's got to have completely gone and be punch drunk for Jake Paul to beat him after the last fight against Dubois. People think, well, his jaw's gone there, he can't take a shot. Of course he can take a shot, and it's weighing up the opposition, and he weighed up the opposition, and he's not going to be training like he trained for Usyk or for the big fights. He won't do that because they can't get motivated enough to do it. They'll do enough to do the rounds. What was it, an 8-rounder?
Yeah.
So same again. So he did enough. He never looked in any trouble. It didn't look great, but Tyson Fury didn't look great against Ngannou, did he? But who did he box after Ngannou?
Was it Usyk?
Exactly. Yeah. But you would have never thought, looking at the performance against Ngannou with Tyson, you would never have thought that he put in the performance he did against Usyk.
So you think it's more of a case of you kind of, no matter how good you are and how much you train, if the opposition isn't great, you sometimes you're going to box at the level of the opponent because the opponent makes you fight at that level. That's quite a fair.
So, but when AJ did,
he emphasized that lasting against a fighter of Anthony Joshua's caliber demanded real courage and toughness, and that the bout was a clear reminder of the physical risks inherent in boxing, proving that hype alone cannot prepare someone for elite-level competition. Jake Paul's mother later shocked the boxing world by directing angry words toward Anthony Joshua and Eddie Hearn after her son's fight. She voiced frustration at Hearn, saying she was upset seeing him smiling while Jake struggled in the ring, and criticized both Joshua and Hearn for not stopping the contest earlier. She felt her son took unnecessary punishment, and her emotional reaction reflected the deep protectiveness and genuine concern surrounding Jake's safety. While many fans and analysts viewed her response as extreme, they also acknowledged it was understandable given the punishing nature of the fight and the danger Jake faced against Joshua's power. Interview 8.
You don't like his smug face?
No. Literally thinks he's better than everybody in the world.
Shit-eating grin. I said the exact bro,
Jake's over there, struggling, and he's sitting over there smiling like the cat who swallowed the canary. Guess what? Did he fucking get in the ring?
Do you think he was happy with what happened to Jake?
Oh, of course.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, my God.
Now, this is coming from a mother, too, guys. So I just want y'all to understand. This is a mom. But at the end of the day, it's his job to laugh. Because, hell, I was laughing at Jake Paul. I can't even lie. I'm not a big Jake Paul fan. But, part of the process. We got to report on this stuff. But Mama Paul, hella mad.
God, and that's sickening to me. It's sick. I don't like it. Even Anthony Joshua had some class and, apologized to me.
Did he really?
Yeah. He worked his way through the crowd and came up to me and said, Mom, it's just boxing.
Jake Paul was seen recovering in the hospital, clearly in pain after the punishing knockout that resulted in a fractured jaw. The sharp contrast between Logan Paul's confident public presence and Jake's weakened state underscored the brutal reality of facing an elite heavyweight in the ring. Fans and analysts reacted strongly to the situation, pointing out that while Logan's behavior grabbed headlines, the true focus remained on Jake's condition and the heavy physical toll the fight took on him.
Paul would be more of a mismatch than Jake Paul. You know what I mean? Because at least Jake Paul has taken boxing or has trained with real boxing trainers in real boxes. Whereas Logan Paul, he did that exhibition with Floyd, and Floyd's a little guy. Not saying a little guy can't thump, because Floyd really gave him some two pieces with no sides, right? But at the same time, you take his friend, Floyd's friend, Anthony Joshua, and get hit by him and see what happens. The same thing. Probably worse, because I think Logan, he's a little taller than Jake. And because he's a little taller than Jake, he may think he's a little stronger than Jake. Which I don't know which one's true or not. I don't think it makes a difference. But because he may feel that way, he may want to go in there and try to bang it out with AJ. And if that happens, it's going to be a lot quicker. See, that 6 rounds it took AJ to finally catch Jake. It took that way because Jake was on that bicycle, moving, being elusive, trying to come in and then come out. He tried to do a very poor man's Alexander Usyk, right? And it didn't work for him. Logan ain't gonna do that. Logan's gonna come in throwing punches and bunches like he did with Floyd, trying to get him in there and, you know, do all this stuff. And what's gonna happen as soon as AJ lines him up, sets his punch, he's gonna hit Jake and he's gonna break Jake down, and he may break his jaw or face or orbital bone or something, nose. Something is going to be broken.
Chris Algieri and Pauli Malignaggi delivered a blunt, honest breakdown of Jake Paul's fight against Anthony Joshua, stressing how punishing the bout was for Paul. They explained that the contest ended with serious consequences, highlighting the heavy physical price of facing a true world-class heavyweight. Both analysts pointed out that Joshua's power and accuracy gave Paul very little space to work, clearly exposing gaps in his defense. Algieri and Malignaggi emphasized that the fight was a harsh reminder of the risks involved when stepping into the ring against elite opposition without the right level of preparation. Their assessment painted a clear picture of the tough reality Paul faced and the warning it sends to anyone considering similar high-risk matchups.
Out there and he tried to fight, he tried to win. Jake Paul didn't try to win at any point during the fight. He was just trying to survive. I think that's actually ultimately going to hurt him with boxing fans.
Yeah, what do you think, Paulie? I mean, you talked about the in and out kind of style, kind of hits and runs, and you said that A, it runs out your legs. He was exhausted a couple rounds into the fight, and B, it only saved him for so long.
He doesn't have the boxing skills to box on the move anyway. Once I saw the big ring, I knew he was going to run for his life. When you're that much of a novice, which obviously it's not even an insult to him, it's just lack of experience. But when you're that much of a novice, you either know how to run for your life or fight all out. You don't have that in between yet. You haven't developed enough of that in between boxing acumen to really pull that off. And so what ends up happening? You're either gonna fight your ass off and you'll last a minute. Chris, you're being generous. Round 2, he would have got knocked down round 1 if he would have fought. But at least he would have fought. He would have got the respect of the people and more importantly, the boxing community instead of these clowns that follow him and are still defending him. Now what happens is you didn't get any respect as a fighter. You didn't get any respect as a fighter because you didn't try to fight at all. If he would have, I was watching that through 2-3 rounds. I'm thinking to myself, this guy would do this for 8 rounds if he can. If he can do this for 8 rounds, absolutely not fight at all, absolutely not engage a single time in 8 rounds, he will actually do this. And he'll do it shamelessly. And that's the problem. That's the problem. The shamelessness of his approach to the fight. You're gonna be a fighter, then don't make an ass out of the whole sport, out of the whole business, and out of yourself first and foremost. Because in the end, what happens? You got his jaw broke anyway. So what ends up happening? What's the worst that's going to happen? You're going to get hurt, you're going to get knocked out? You got hurt and you got knocked out anyway. But you just prolonged the inevitable, and you got no respect out of it now. Because nobody's respecting that kind of performance. Nobody's respecting a performance where you were totally content to steal money from everyone by running for your life for 8 rounds. And if you could have not engaged a single time in 8 rounds, that's what he was trying to do. He was trying to pull that off.